Hello, this is Mark Holmes. I'm the editor of Via Satellite. I'm in my home office in Meldreth, Cambridgeshire this morning, which has been basically my home for the last few months. And with me, I'm delighted to have Steve Collar, the CEO of SES, and our latest Satellite Executive of the Year. Steve, firstly, welcome. And how's the family? How's lockdown? And how are you coping with everything right now?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. All good, I would say. Obviously, I think we're probably week 5 now of working sort of out of the office. And it's gone about as well as it could reasonably have gone, to be honest. I think we're really lucky that we're relatively, everyone's kind of got a laptop. Most of our systems are available online. And so the impact has been much less. In fact, I think we're all going to learn something from this. It'll probably change the way we work going forward. From a home perspective, wife and daughter both good. Family back in the UK, all good for now, touch wood. We're doing a lot of talking to one another on House Party and Teams and Skype and all of those kind of things. But yeah, for now, all good.
So you had any Zoom parties so far?
Do you know, I not through necessarily any conscious choice, but the Zoom that's the one kind of app that we've not really used too much. But House Party's getting hammered, mainly with sort of friends and family. And it's nice because you can kind of see when people are available. And we've had plenty of virtual happy hours and sort of social meets, which has been nice. Actually, one of the benefits has been I've been speaking with some of my mates going back a long time, probably more over this last sort of 6 weeks than any time in the previous several years. So that's been a nice thing.
I can imagine. I think probably one of the most stressful things I do now is organizing my online shopping deliveries for my mum and dad.
I'm totally with you on that, and I have terrible problems getting slots. You know, I'm fortunate in that I have 2 brothers, both back in the UK, and they're relatively close to my folks. But I just feel useless being here, so I want to try and do something that's helpful. And getting online and shopping for them is something that I can at least do. And the first few experiences were great because I managed to get slots and I could buy all sorts of weird and wonderful things for my dad. And it was kind of a bit of an adventure for him to open up the shopping and find out what random stuff I bought for him. But yeah, the last few weeks, I've had a real tough time just getting any availability, getting any slots for him to get any food. So he's had to rely on my brothers.
I know. I had an interesting thing where I set up the online account for my mum and dad at Tesco. They never had done online shopping before. Set up the account, got up at 1 minute past midnight, got a slot for them. They gave me a shopping list, put all their shopping in it, and then all was sorted. And then what's the first thing my dad says to me the following morning? Is it, "Thank you, Mark, thank you for organizing that," or anything? It's, "Mark, why did you put no sugar ketchup on the shopping list?" Is that so? I said, "Well, you can change it, and it pretty much tastes the same." But so yeah, that was an interesting experience. Now, some of the satellite community know, but may not know, that one thing you and I have in common is that we are big Liverpool fans. And obviously we've had an amazing season and stuff. So, what's your take? What's going to happen here? Do you think the season is going to be voided? Do you think we'll be crowned champions? And what's your sort of take on the whole football side of things?
Look, one of the things that makes me sort of happy to be and proud to be a Liverpool fan at the moment is the leadership that Klopp is showing through this thing. And he said relatively early on in all of this, which, bear in mind, for a club that hasn't won the league for 30 years, he kind of said, this is more important than worrying about what happens and making sure that we come through this period as well as we can. Like I say, that was something he said very early, which I thought was incredibly impressive. I don't know. I think it's more than likely that they will finish the season, just because I can't imagine what happens if they don't. What happens to the Champions League? What happens to promotion and relegation? To me, it just feels enormously messy to say, okay, we're going to start again. And that's leaving aside the financial implications. I think there's a whole bunch of conversation that's going on between the broadcasters and the Premier League at the moment about, what happens to to TV revenues and rights if they cancel. So it's an enormously complicated issue. I'm not a big I'm not a big fan of behind closed doors stuff. I think that fans is what makes football, and it's one of the things that makes the Premier League so rich is the fact that you know the fans play such an important part, and so the idea of playing behind closed doors isn't a great one. I suspect that's how they start, and then maybe they get fans back into the stadiums as you know, as soon as they safely can after that. But yeah, my feeling is they'll finish the season. I certainly hope they do, because as you say, we have a somewhat vested interest in trying to make sure that's the case. That said, I think we've you know, Liverpool now have built a team that will compete, you know, for the next several years. Won the Champions League last year. Be fairly optimistic that, you know, we will be in the hunt no matter what happens.
I know what you mean about behind closed doors, because I mean, even when we talk in the industry, we talk about shared experiences. And you know, one of the things I mean, I'm a big sports fan, big Liverpool fan, big tennis fan, and other sports as well, is actually missing those you know, those shared experience that really unite us in many ways beyond the professional identities. And you know,
yeah, I mean, you know, the last game I went to Liverpool was the Atletico Madrid away game. We went to Madrid. You know, love visiting other stadiums and other environments, and it was fun. We didn't win; we lost that game narrowly, but it was a great experience. But I couldn't make the home game, and frankly, had sort of already made a decision that I wouldn't go. And you know, we had hundreds, thousands, 5,000, I think it was, Atletico fans who came across to Liverpool at a time where, you know, the situation in Spain was already terrible, and it didn't feel, you know, I think you and I had a conversation where we sort of said any action that's taken before this thing's declared a pandemic will seem like an overreaction, and anything after that will seem like we didn't do nearly enough. And definitely that game in Liverpool where had 5,000 away fans come from, you know, travel across from Madrid. You know, that following weekend, there were 250,000 people in Cheltenham. You just wonder what would have happened and how much more easier it would have been for certainly the UK to have coped with this had those things not had been allowed to happen. And so it shines a light on the fact that as much as sport's important to us, and it is important, and I think it'll be really important in the recovery, you know, there's a bigger thing going on here.
Yeah, just one final question on that. I'm more just curious. I mean, you said you were over in Madrid for that game, and I remember watching that game. Well, I mean, I know that was 2 or 3 weeks before the home game, but was there any sort of sense then? I mean, you know, or was it still? I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, not really, and I remember it not really being a big consideration when we were thinking about going over there, but it definitely was a consideration, you know, for the home game. So it just shows you that in a relatively short period of time, your thinking changes and your appreciation changes, and the things that you worry about change. And so yeah, for going there, no, but definitely for the home game.
And just one sort of final question on the whole Liverpool thing. What is your best Liverpool memory? What was it? The Tottenham, AC Milan? Do you have a particular?
Yeah, I've had a few. I mean, I've been lucky. I was there last year when we won the Champions League against Spurs. But I've also, you know, had a few bad ones, right? I went to Kiev where we got done by Real. I went to Athens where we got beat Milan. I was at Anfield for the Dortmund win where we won 4-3, which was one of the most incredible games of football I've ever seen. But for me, it's Istanbul 2005, coming back from 3 down to draw initially with Milan and then beat them on penalties. It was just the most emotional, incredible game. You just couldn't make it up. It was, and Istanbul was an incredible city as well to have that kind of experience. So yeah, that will take some beating.
I'll tell you one of mine. It was actually last year during the Barcelona game, which I probably remember was actually going on literally during satellite. And I was a bunch of video interviews at the time, and my 12-year-old daughter and my dad were watching the game at home and you know, sending updates. And then I did sort of, we were 1-0 up at half. I got this. I could hear my phone pinging as I'm doing this video interview. So like, I know like something's going on, and and they go, they've scored, and so I get off the phone, and they go, so it's 2-0. No, it's 3. They got 2 in 2 minutes, and it's like, and I remember I was trying to do these video interviews during the satellite show, and I'm pacing around,
Yeah.
because I think even
No, I remember. So for me, it was the same. We had to win that game. We had to score 3, right, just to be in the game. And there's a bar I was at Satellite with you, and there was a bar just literally opposite the convention center, a sports bar. So I was going backwards and forwards between meetings and going in and checking the score. And so I went in at halftime, and we were 1 up. And I thought, I'm not sure. So I went and had one more meeting, came back, and Wijnaldum had just scored 2. And from that moment on, it was crazy. But there is, and this is what we were talking earlier on about fans. There's a huge difference, obviously, of being there. I had mates in the stadium, and the feedback on that match was that it was right up there with one of the best nights ever at Anfield.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. Let's talk about something. I mean, we're all stuck at home, so we're all sort of having these combined family experiences and watching movies and things we maybe not normally watch because we're sort of stuck at home. So, I'm sort of interested in what's any box set recommendations, movie recommendations?
What's on at the Collar household? Well, I have to tell you, I'm very realistic about what I'm in charge of and what I'm not in charge of, and the TV at home, unless the football's on, is very much one of those things I'm not in charge of. So my 14-year-old largely dictates what it is that we watch, and so yeah, we've never been that into box sets. I can't think of the number of things that I've watched, kind of one thing after the next. Probably the last one of those that I watched was Afterlife, which was Ricky Gervais's sort of comedy, but sort of poignant comedy, which is brilliant. For anyone who hasn't watched it, I'd sort of recommend that. And I think the second one is coming out within the next few days, so kind of looking forward to that. But yeah, no, viewing habits of a 14-year-old currently extend to RuPaul's Drag Race. So this is what I'm now. I'm now getting educated in the world of RuPaul and drag. Not something that you should expect to see from me anytime soon, but certainly quite amusing.
No, I mean, I'm saying I have a 12-year-old, so I get to watch a lot of these high school teen US dramas and stuff. So completely, my viewing habits have changed as well. So I'm with you. She's Ruby, I think, slightly younger than yours also, but I hear where you're coming from. And music, I know you're a big Arctic Monkeys fan. Any sort of music recommendations for us? Any bands, artists that you've listened to, checked out recently?
Not really. Again, it's I'm informed a little bit by what Ella's listening to. So Dua Lipa's latest album, we've got that on download. So that's my kind of morning tunes at the moment. But yeah, I'm also fairly eclectic in my music taste. I'm happy to go anywhere from, I'm a big fan of Coldplay, Stone Roses, some of the bands that were kind of around as I was growing up. But my dad got me early into classical music as well, so I listened to a bit of that. So it's depends. I find that music is a massive mood enhancer, and so I'll listen to different stuff depending on how I'm feeling about how life's appearing on any given day.
So were you into that 1990s indie?
I was a bit, kind of. Sort of, Oasis were big at that time. Stone Roses I really liked. A lot of those sorts of bands, the Manchester bands. Blur, I was one of the few that liked both Oasis and Blur. There was this big kind of thing between Oasis and Blur.
I took a while to get into Blur myself. It was one of them at the time. I must admit, I was much more on the Oasis side than the Blur side. But years later, when I actually sat down and listened to a lot of the Blur stuff, it really this was much better than I thought it was when it came out. It was much more a slow grower for me.
I was like that with some of the big. I was like that with the Jam and Paul Weller. He sort of passed me by, but absolutely loved that stuff. The same with the Smiths. The Smiths, again, I had mates who would just go on endlessly about how good the Smiths were, and I'd listen to it and think, I'm not so sure about this, but absolutely love it now. So yeah, it just shows that music's definitely an acquired taste, and it's worth sticking with.
And let's talk a little bit, I guess, more on some of the satellite side. Now we are a few weeks into sort of lockdown now. I mean, how is sort of the morale in the company, and what are you sort of doing? I mean, you talked about some virtual happy hours. I mean, what are you sort of doing to sort of keep spirits up and
Do you know, it's been one of the best things about it is we haven't really felt the need to keep spirits up, because people have, folks who work at SES have been really engaged through this whole thing. I think had some good conversations at the start of all this about how it was going to go. As I say, we relatively quickly found our rhythm in terms of being more connected online, a lot more video calls, and we kind of made a decision fairly early on that wherever we could, we turn the video on. Right? It's even if you're sitting at home and your hair's a mess, it's still better to kind of look people in the eye and sort of be on video than kind of on calls. And so we do that. Obviously, we had, like everyone, I think, a few challenges with the network early on, but that's all stabilized. We've all figured out what the best platforms are. And now we're in an environment where we're trying to optimize things a little bit. I think everyone's getting a bit fatigued by the number of calls they're on. It's this thing, you get up at 7 and turn the laptop on, and before you know it, you're on a call, and then it's you haven't eaten and it's the middle of the afternoon or something. So it's I think it's important that we try and give each other time to find a bit of if you just go and make a cup of tea or time to get some stuff done. So we're being a bit thoughtful about that stuff. But I have to say, the engagement we've seen, and particularly we've got people who've got kids at home that they're trying to balance homeschooling and mum or dad school together with doing a full-time job, and it's tough. But I think we decided fairly early on we were going to focus on sort of output and outcome rather than just sort of time spent behind the laptop, and people have stepped up amazingly and are really actually I sort of said to one of our all hands that SES shines when we're up against it or we face challenge, and that's really what we've seen over the last sort of month or 6 weeks is the whole organization has stepped up in an incredible way. And I think as I speak to others have that same experience, that with this challenge comes a lot of engagement.
And do you think it's going to change the way you do business going forward, even after this, hopefully comes to an end, whether it's through a vaccine, which seems the most logical conclusion, that even once we've come through this, it's going to fundamentally, we're not just going to go back to the way we were before. Do you think you're going to run SES a little bit differently as a result of some of the lessons that you're learning now?
I think so, because we've all proven that we can do it, right? I think, it's almost taken a situation where we've been forced into it to show that remote working can actually be super healthy, and there are some people that thrive on it. I'm an extreme extrovert, so if I spent more than 5 minutes in a room on my own, I need to get out. But you've got a lot of different working styles and different folks for whom they don't want to necessarily spend, an hour and a half commuting to sit in an office. And so I think it's taught us that we can work effectively remotely. I think we knew that anyway. We've got a bunch of folks who aren't necessarily tied to offices. We've got a very global footprint, but nevertheless, I think it will change the way we think about work. It'll make us a lot more flexible as a company and as an industry and kind of as a planet. And I think that's good, and I think one of the enormous benefits we've seen is the reduction in in pollution, and the sort of, as much as the reduction in air travel is clearly putting some industries under stress, it's having enormously positive influence on the environment. And I think that's a really good thing. And I think it will encourage us all to be a lot more thoughtful about that stuff going forward. I did a virtual roadshow for investors where I was able to, sit here and speak to nine different investors over a course of a day. That would normally take me, 2 or 3 or 4 days of travel to go do all that stuff. And so, I don't think it'll replace all of it, but I think if it can replace some of it, that's already a good thing.
And I mean, SES had a great year last year, groundbreaking deal with Microsoft. I mean, the networks business continues to go from strength to strength. And again, congratulations for being our satellite executive of the year. I mean, how do you sort of see you know, I mean, just a final couple of questions. You know, the industry getting through this period now. I mean, we look at like markets like mobility, which has been traditionally a strong growth market, and that's also going to have some challenges. And you know, it's one of the things about this industry is always seems to be very resilient at times of, you know, global, when there's been, you know, negative global situations. Do you think that's the case this time around, or do you think it may be more difficult?
No, look, I think in general, satellite industry is very resilient. It's one of the great things about the industry, and you know, I think it'll be as true during this period as any other. That said, I think the depth of challenge is profound. None of us have experienced this before. You know, I think the markets have only seen this kind of volatility 3 times in the last 100 years, which speaks only to the fact that nobody really knows what's going to happen. I think it's going to take us longer as a planet to come out of this than we expect. I think, you know, vaccine is certainly one route, but regardless, I think we're all going to be a lot more sort of mindful of what does social distancing mean, and how do we take care of one another from a health standpoint. And I think, you know, that can have some positive impacts, but it's also going to mean that economies are going to take longer to recover. And so our business will be impacted. The thing that I feel that sort of breaks my heart a little bit is you've got small businesses, you know, in our industry, in all industries, that are going to hugely suffer through this. That you know, liquidity is a real problem, and there aren't, you know, it's not every business that can sustain 3 months, 6 months, 9 months of meaningfully lower revenues. And so I think, you know, we're going to see some impacts from that. I think, you know, we will emerge through this period well, and we'll come out of the other end stronger. But it's important that we also support our customers through this period, and some of them are, the aero service providers, the cruise lines, they're having a tough time. So yeah, we will partner with our customers as closely as possible through this period and make sure that we all come through this together.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and we talk to a lot of them as well, and you know, we're wishing them all the best as well. You know, just the final question as we wrap up this really interesting conversation. What would you be your final message to this industry right now? I mean, a lot of us are working from home. I mean, a lot of us are adapting to change. You know, I mean, this is something that really does affect everybody on multiple levels in both your professional life and in your personal life. You know, obviously the industry is you know, going to be in the midst of is going to be impacted by this as well. Do you have any sort of final message for the satellite community and for your partners, the companies who you invest in? And,
you know, look, I'm not sure I'm a spokesman for the industry, but what I think about during these times is what an amazing industry we work in, and what an incredible difference we can make at these sorts of times. So if I just reflect on our business, we connect 365 million households, and by doing that, we're able to deliver content, incredible programming, news. You know, the uptick that we've seen in the demand for linear news is amazing, and kind of reinforces what we do. And similarly on the broadband side, you know, broadband has never been more important, connecting hospitals, connecting, you know, rural communities so that kids can continue to get educated. We have a reach that nobody else has, that, you know, terrestrial networks providers can't dream of the kind of reach that we have as an industry. And so I think it's really important, you know, that this is first and foremost a humanitarian crisis. It's not a humanitarian crisis that we typically think about as a result of, for example, a natural disaster. In many respects, it's even more profound and more deep-rooted, and the positive impacts that we can have as an industry are profound, and I draw great comfort from that. And it's one of the things that keeps me in this industry. We spoke about the fact that I came into this industry by accident 27 years ago, and I've never left. And it's for exactly those kind of reasons that we have the ability to touch lives in a way that few other industries do. And I find that, you know, inspiring every day, but particularly at times like this.
Well, Steve, as always, it's been been a pleasure. I have this image of you like with Dua Lipa in the morning,
Yeah.
ready for your video calls. But it's been a real pleasure, and on behalf of the Via Satellite team, I mean, congratulations again, but also congratulations for the work that you're doing in helping some of these initiatives and helping connect people and really helping people in all corners of the world as they're dealing with this. I mean, I think this industry does some amazing work when we look beyond the business models and we look beyond some of that stuff. It's an industry that connects people, and if one thing this period has taught me is that the importance of people, the importance of relationships, is more important than ever. And I think you mentioned it when you said about talking to people on video calls that perhaps you haven't. I think I've been the same. I think a lot of people have been the same. So this industry enables that in many ways, but it enables that for people that maybe don't have the connectivity options that maybe you or I have. So I think it's vitally important. So I want to wish you and the SES team all the best over the coming months. SES, as well as many other companies in this industry, does great work, and we at Via Satellite will continue to support you. And we wish you all the best.
Very good. Thanks, Mark. It's been fun talking to you.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Take it easy.